All right, good, Kevin?
Mhm.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your indulgence with us this evening. I apologize for a late start for the public safety meeting. It was originally scheduled for 5:30. It's now 5:50, and we'll call the meeting to order. Mr. Seifert, if you call the roll, please.
Mr. Babcock?
Here.
Mrs. Sweet?
Here.
Mr. Hannah?
Present. Thank you. At this point, we're hoping that Chief Holler will be here momentarily. Otherwise, is there any pressing issues that we have before us this evening as related to public safety? Do we have, I've not seen the proposals from the public service meeting last week. Do we have an idea of where our pay scales are going to be or our new pay scales will be for our police officers that may be coming in?
It's something that we decided that all council needed to talk about, so we're still looking through it, correct?
Okay. All right.
But we did come up with the conclusion that we do need another full-time position. Was it full-time?
No, I don't think we came to that decision. I think it was really for bumping the starting pay for part-time officers is what.
No, that was the,
This meeting
right.
was for. I think, if I remember right.
I know there was also, it's my understanding that there was also some talk of looking at authorized strength and not dealing with per se full-time versus part-time employees. So that basically you'd have a police officer and it wouldn't be considered part-time or full-time. It would be basically a police officer position at the rate of pay. Is that somewhat accurate?
I thought Mike was pretty adamant about plussing up one and that he had the budget authority to do so.
Well, I think he was still looking at his budget to see, and he was hoping for one of the grants to come through to cover. But what I took from the last meeting was he was wanting to increase the bottom portion of the part-time pay
To 20.
that he could get people in the door.
Mhm.
Right.
Yes,
He
that
could
was,
get people immediately if we
Right.
were to offer $20 an hour
Right.
instead of 12 or
Right.
14, whatever it was.
yeah.
Right.
We figured, if we could go ahead and do that, it's not going to increase our budget too much. We can maybe push the full-time decision down the road, looking at numbers, looking more into it to see what the cost is going to be further down the road, not put ourselves in a position where, even if we get a grant, what are we going to do in 2 years? Are we going to have to lay somebody off because we can't cover it internally?
I know as my experience, I think it's been 3 weeks ago when we interviewed a candidate and to try to tell them the benefits of coming to work for the village of Enon for $12 an hour as part-time, and when they're already employed with a law enforcement entity and would have to take probably an $8 an hour pay cut to come here to work on part-time. I don't see that as really being a positive or being conducive to drawing the best candidates. So,
Well, I think $12 an hour is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, for a police officer,
Officer.
putting their life on the line potentially, even in a village like Enon, is just that's just wrong.
Right. And
And-
I think that's where the conversation stemmed from. That's why the committee meeting happened was we said, well, why are you stuck to $12 an hour? It's because that's what we said at the start of the year. So,
for the scales.
right.
Mhm.
And that's our fault.
And
But he thought that if we could get more part-time officers, he wouldn't have to worry about his gaps in coverage, people not being able to take vacation, things like that. So,
and that's been an ongoing problem for a long time. If we voted previously to go outside the pay scales in order to benefit some of the people that we brought on, thinking it was going to be in the village's interest to do that. So I don't know why that couldn't be considered with possibly any candidate that we want to bring in if we feel their quality and while we're working within the pay scales itself, but that doesn't mean that that person has to start in that lower pay scale, even though that was what the initial thought of that was when they were with the previous chief. So,
I mean, my thing is, it's hard. It'd be hard for me to say someone straight out of Clark State, out of the academy, should make the same as a couple of our other part-time officers that have been here for a couple years that have, you know, one of our officers has this much experience. To me, it's not right that our officers are training this person and they're making nearly the same.
and you know that goes back to too, if part-time versus full-time is irrelevant, we were paying our employees based off of their, I don't want to say their skill levels, but their expertise that are coming in here, whether it be full-time or part-time. That might be conducive to bringing some more quality part-timers in. I'm not sure, because now it seems like every entity around is still looking for quality candidates is the problem, and I don't know if we've ever seen that before. But another thing too is I know the council have voted to give the authority for a fifth full-time position. I know that there's been a problematic as far as the actual dollars coming about on that, and making sure again that we could pocket that for multiple years down the pike, and you know, maybe let's face it, we've had in the past, I think if I remember, our strength might have been, what, 12, 15 when we first came on council. Because I think we had almost 12 part-time,
There were a lot.
and then we had we had 3 full-time, if I remember. Or was it 4 full-time? So it's a whole different scenario now. We have to do something to put bodies in our cars, and you know, whether that's advertising, going more proactive with different cities, and I hate to talk about this when the chief's not here, but you know, is there some outreach program that we could do to advertise for candidates to be coming in and
Well, I mean, but the first thing you got to do, Rick, is you have to increase the pay before you can advertise, because you can't advertise for $12.
right.
I mean, that was the foundation is you've got to set the pay scale right, and you've got to change the pay from $20 starting, and maybe bump up to, you know, like Jeremy was saying, 25 for the more senior, more experienced people that we have. And 20, you've got to authorize that, we as the council, and then start from there. And then once you've done that, and then figure out your marketing strategy to bring in other officers.
Okay.
Right. See what happens. Maybe we won't get part-time officers because maybe people aren't interested in doing it. But I think he seems to think that he could have an interview and he tells him it's $20 an hour. He thinks he's going to get officers right now, which hopefully myself, I'd rather go that route than entertain the full-time right now.
I've seen in the past where you've put the pay scales in there and say that the pay may be commensurate with experience. So that way you've kind of left a leeway for people that might be or have some interest to say, hey, okay, what would my pay scale be if I came there? Rather than just saying a flat, you know, this is what we've got. So, yeah.
Well, $20 is, I think, a fair starting for police officer if they've graduated from the academy, those kinds of things. And then if they have some experience, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25
Right.
for a part-time officer. you press on that way.
I agree. I agree.
I mean,
So-
that's the pay commensurate with experience, Rick.
Right.
And I think that's basically the conversation we had at council a couple Tuesdays ago. You know, we talked and kind of, I think everyone agreed that 20 to 25 would be a good range for part-time officers.
Okay.
To get them and keep them.
Correct.
Right.
I guess I just wasn't cognizant. I just wasn't aware that $12 is what we were paying. I went, oh my God.
I would,
I I did the V8 thing. I went, you got to be kidding me.
right, it doesn't matter where
I
you
was
work.
embarrassed.
Yeah.
I mean, I really was.
I mean, the world now, stuff can happen anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, what we can say as far as public safety, then we would go ahead with the recommendation from our notes that we would be looking to start people at 20 to 25 bucks an hour or dollars per hour based off of possible work-life, I hate to say work-life experience, but skills, prior employment.
Part-time employment, but you're talking part-time.
Knowledge, well, we call them KSAs, right?
Right.
Knowledge,
Yeah.
skills,
Yeah,
and,
KS,
and
yeah.
abilities.
And I mean, maybe
I-
that's something that he has to figure out what the breaks are between 20 to 25. But
Mhm.
I think if we can give him that range,
That range.
then he can work with it.
Right.
I think we would have been able to pull this last candidate in. Of course, it would have been full-time, but if we were at 20 bucks an hour, I think he would have rotated over to us. Now, one thing too is we've got to be a quality organization to keep people. And that's something we need to work on is retention. And I'm not sure where to go on dealing with the retention at this point.
I agree. I think we somewhat have to come to the realization that, we've seen it the last, or as long as I've been on, 6-7 years, there's going to be some we're not going to be able to keep regardless. I mean, people have higher aspirations than being a full-time police officer in Enon. Now, we've been lucky with a few for sure, but I think getting people in the door, knowing we're going to kind of be a stepping stone and coming to the realization that we're okay with that.
We used to call it everybody has terms for it, but we used to call it the eye. If you've got an officer that's got the eye and the knack to know what's the street sense, more power to them. We've a couple of them that we've had have moved along very well, and I'm very proud of them.
Right.
So that's in that aspect, it looks good from us to be a starting stone for those candidates. The ones that choose to go elsewhere, you're always going to have that, but we know that we've had candidates here or we've had officers here over the past years that wanted to stay here when they started and had every intention to want to stay here, and somewhere down that pike the cookie crumbled. And I think that's one thing that we have to address as council on how do we change that environment and make it a conducive place to work. And that doesn't stay strictly on the police department. It also stays on this side of the building as well. So I never like losing an employee, but when employees leave and ugly things happen after they're gone or right when they're leaving, I never like seeing that, and some of that you'll never stop. But it's unfortunate that sometimes things go where they go, and we're not able to correct the ship before it sails.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and what I was getting at was, pay or status based, just to be a Clark County officer, a sheriff, or an Ohio State highway patrolman. those were the kind of ones that I'm talking about. But people that leave disgruntled, yeah, we for sure look at that. But I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we're going to be able to cover wages, have our wages high enough to compete with a lot of other places around. And we have to be okay with that. But you're absolutely right. The work environment absolutely has to be looked at, and hopefully it's good right now and it stays that way. We do need to try to keep people that want to be here, for sure.
And for that, we can't offer the same opportunities that you do if you go to Kettering or
Right.
or go to the county, as far as professional advancement. So there has to be some bonus to staying in Mayberry, and for lack of a better term. But I'm at my wit's end on trying to figure out how we get people here and how we keep them. And I think we've all had sleepless nights over that, to be honest. And I don't know. Any other concerns? Before we go too far off of this, and I wish Mike was here. I've got a real problem with the way that the village and the school board or the school superintendent per se is we're being used in some categories, and I've discussed with the chief that it's unfortunate we did not get the SRO position there. I can probably understand why we didn't when you've got a sheriff's office that's got the whole system down. But what I have talked to the chief about is if we're not going to be their choice for the SRO, that when there are unfortunate occurrences at the school and we're required to be there, that we do what we deem necessary to cover the situation in hand and leave. Our citizens deserve officers on the street and not stationed at the school, in my opinion, for extended period of times, for lack of a better term, babysitting. We pray to God that nothing would ever happen, but I would like to see the school understand that we have a duty to our citizens to be out there and not so much to be sitting in the parking lot as monitors. If they've chosen to go SRO with the sheriff's office, then perhaps the sheriff's office should be providing the additional protection in the schools and when things like that happens. And the chief is here now. We've talked about trying to raise the starting pay for candidates based on their experience to $20 to $25. I think we'll be moving forward as far as the public safety committee with that formal recommendation off of that. I think you had talked also about eliminating the category of full-time, part-time, and just considering police officers. Is that my understanding, or?
Yeah, that's correct. First off, I apologize for my extreme tardiness. Yeah, I would just like to, for wage part, I just wouldn't, part-time, full-time, I'd just officer, the hiring, entry-level hiring for either to be what you said.
Okay. Let's see. And we also talked about trying to do retention of our officers. So the continual losing of them, I think, is concerning to everybody. We had talked about trying to maybe advertise in further out of our area to see if we can pull candidates in with a higher dollar figure per chance, where that might be Dayton or Columbus or. You may have did that.
Yeah, we already get them from all over. Right now, everybody's just hurting for candidates. It's not just us. It's not small agencies. It's the large agencies, mid-sized agencies. But pay did come into a factor over the last, right before COVID hit, because the large scale of retirement and the larger agencies absorbing everybody. And, it just hit harder than we thought. We knew it was going to come because it was kind of predicted a little bit, but didn't know it to be that scale. And then you had some negative media on law enforcement right there at the beginning, and not a lot of people wanted to get into law enforcement, I would say, at least from what they said, because of some of that negative media.
Yeah, Columbus was giving incentive pay to have people retire. I'm still trying to figure that one out, but that they lost a lot of officers strictly by giving the seemed like 125,000 or something, if I remember, but it was a tidy sum just to go ahead and retire and get them.
And then they were hoping to get transfers, and then the transfers didn't come in.
Yeah.
That didn't make sense to me.
When you have agencies offering sign-on bonuses, which, a lot of that was through some grant funding, hopefully, we can look in. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I know that pay is, a lot of people have discussed that the entry-level pay was way too low. When I say a lot of people, I mean a lot of people that were to apply and ones that currently work. So hopefully that'll help. And then, I don't know. We're always progressing, so we're just hopefully learn from some of the stuff we've been told by people is left, and hopefully go from there. I don't know. I just know we need more staff to accommodate most of what the comments are. So a lot of people, they like to have that other person to be able to work beside, to be able to bounce something off of. Your calls are different now. They're a little bit more, I hate to say dangerous, because I know this job's been dangerous forever, but more people are more confrontational now, rather. And a lot of your single calls are now more of a two-person call than they were back in the day when you could handle one person. Now it's more of a two-person. And then agencies are operating thin. I know we assist the sheriff's office, but they in turn, they assist us, and they're thin as well, often in state patrol and everybody. So the assistance isn't there. So
I know one of the things we've talked about before is our officers don't know what they don't know. So unfortunately, sometimes you make a bad mistake, and that mistake can cause great harm in the learning process of that. So sometimes those situations are unforgiving. So, and unfortunately, we are able to piggyback a little bit on the other agencies that maybe have some enhanced training compared to what some of ours have been able to catch up with, and ideally vice versa. But
well, we've also raised the bar on our professional standards significantly since 2012, when the revamp, I would say that's a fair word, of the police department. The way it was structured, the things that the community and council wanted out of it, and what you expected out of the agency, which we have provided. I know that you have had me attend several administrative trainings that did even move me up into the lieutenant spot prior to that, when I was a sergeant. And we hold officers accountable, and we have them do the training, whether it's an area they wanted to be in or not. We have them so they're overall trained. You know what I mean? Whether it be you got one going as an SRO, and then also some interdiction training to some CIT training. So it's a happy mix. We have officers going to bike patrol training back in the day. They weren't even going to be on the bike. It was just, and we expected that and required that out of our officers. And we expect a lot out of them now, because again, they already operate usually by themselves, and that's a lot to ask out of an individual. And so I think I've been trying to run overlaps, and not to where we're necessarily, funding multiple officers for an entire 8 or 10 hour shift, but to have it overlap to where they are interacting, because it's lonely when you're by yourself and you don't have that, camaraderie, and they want that. That's why they get in this career field. We had that here and there, but again, everybody started They made the lottery happen in this career, and we suffered from that. We suffered from just officers leaving the career completely, and then of course your typical stuff where you get people that you hire that aren't necessarily what you need, and you push them out. Either way, here we are, and I don't know what the answer is. I can tell you that the one academy that I'm aware of locally, they have 8 people in it, and out of those 8 people, I think 75% of them currently have commissions and haven't even sat down for a state test yet. One academy, back on 10 officers, 10 people in there, 9 of them were commissioned before they even sat for the test. So agencies are picking them up. I'm trying to do that. I know agencies, the sheriff's office, where they're putting on corrections academies because they're having a hard time retaining personnel. So it's law enforcement in general and in the workforce in general. But we do at least have to. I think this would be a really good advantage to us, is offering some competitive pay, and that's what this type of career pays. So we might as well pay it. So.
What about equipment? How are we doing on equipment?
We're doing good on equipment. And speaking of new equipment, our rest of our equipment came in for that Rumbler package for the new cruiser. It's P&R right now, getting worked on. Still, everything's good that I'm aware of. I don't think we're deficient anywhere on that.
Anybody have any other comments, concerns, questions, perspectives?
Was there a motion for that or not, for the wage? I know you just talked about it. I didn't know what you were doing.
Now, on committee reports, normally that would be coming out as a suggestion, wouldn't it, rather than a
Recommendation
motion
to
per
Recommendation to
se.
council.
Yeah,
Right.
it would, yes. Now, we could bring that before council and vote as a motion by council, but coming from this, I think it would be a suggestion rather than.
You don't have to have a motion to recommend to council?
Not that I.
All right, just check.
Am I misspeaking? Okay.
I don't think so. I think you're
Okay.
proper. I'd have a question. Everyone is up on all of their perishable skills training and everything? I mean, is there any?
Actually, we have some more of that. They laid a bunch on us for the CPT. They knocked, a lot of people knocked a lot of it out early on, but that's an ongoing thing. But yes, everybody seems to be right.
Okay,
Leveled
good.
off. I think some have
Good.
almost knocked it out. There's other ones that are like your annual qualification accounts, but yeah, we'll get everything will be done, but they've been working on it. We got Officer Dunham getting ready to go to the SRO school here in a couple weeks. She's scheduled to go to that, and she will be attending.
Is there anything new that we need to know about the school as far as the communications situation or just the school situation in general?
We have a meeting July 12th it's just we set on that, our advisory board for their safety plan that they write themselves. Everybody, EMA, fire, law enforcement. I'll schedule our officers. We'll do a training at the school, just the Enon officers, as a response training, just for logistics and just kind of some scenarios. That's just something we'll do. The school's required annually to allow us to use their building for that type of training. And I spoke with Superintendent Kanapke our last meeting in mid-June about setting a date so I could get our agency in there. And I know they had some people off, but they have to have they can have a staff member there, or supposed to have a staff member there. I guess maybe that's a rule, but they have to provide that. So we'll be doing that before the start of school. No solid date on that, but that'll be occurring.
One thing I had a major concern about, I'd overheard you say something about the access to the school, and is it Belvry, or however you say that, in Texas, where they had the school shooting?
Oh,
Apparently there was a
Uvalde.
long delay as far as trying to get keys to access the school itself, and I want to make sure that, we, Lord forbid, that we don't get ourselves in a situation like that. So there were numerous concerns that fell by the wayside there. So that would be quite a checklist of what not to do. I would submit.
Yeah, So I'm highly trained, obviously multiple different trainings in response to that particular type of incident. And but I know that our agency, whether key or no key, we wouldn't have an issue of getting in anywhere in that school that we needed to. I'm not saying it wouldn't be delayed if we didn't have a key, but nothing would stop us from doing what we train to do, which is to go find a threat and neutralize it.
Do they not utilize Knox boxes anymore?
Um,
They're electronic now.
Well, they talked about that, but the Knox boxes are more for your fire and EMS. And for example, in an active shooter response, the fire EMS isn't going to be standing beside us, so it wouldn't be advantageous to us for that. But they had talked about that. They do not currently have one. We do have keys. We have hard keys, and we also have the magnetic keys. We have the physical key for if they would have their security features that do lock the doors, but we have a physical key. And then if nothing else, I'm driving a key. So.
And you carry a hammer, right? Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I drive a SUV.
That's
That's
true.
what I was gonna say.
I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to do that, and there's
No.
other
Right.
strategic ways we could make entry, but and ultimately, yes, if I needed at least to breach the entrance, I have a 4-wheel one.
I think right now, though, would be, I hate to say to strike while the iron is hot, but while the experiences that they learned that failed or was problematic there, that the school be incumbent upon trying to rectify that with our suggestions. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, it's work in progress.
Yep.
I can only do what I can do.
Right, and that's where my point is with we need a willing partner, or we need, again, I've had some concerns with the way the administration for the school has been. So, enough said. So. Anything else before we would call it an evening? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
6:22.